Join us for a conversation with Ubaldo Vitali, Italian artist and scholar residing in New Jersey, the recipient of a 2011 MacArthur Fellowship for his superb silversmithing work, subtly combining ancient alchemy, modern design, and art history. Next on Carpe Diem.
Hello, I'm Teresa Fiore. Welcome to Carpe Diem. Today we're in the company of Ubaldo Vitali, one of the most important living silversmiths in the US, a highly sought-after conservator of silver objects, and a refined art historian. He comes from a Roman family of established goldsmiths and has been a resident of New Jersey for 4 decades, currently working out of a quaint studio in Maplewood. In 2011, he was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship, a prestigious prize for talented individuals who have shown extraordinary originality and dedication in their creative pursuits. Ubaldo, welcome.
Thank you, Teresa. It's always a pleasure being here at Montclair State University campus. I feel when I'm here that I can see the advancement of learning in real action. It's great to be here.
Very good, and actually you're back in a way since you were here in February. The occasion was an evening devoted to your life, your vision, your objects that were on display. This was part of an event organized and sponsored by the INSERA Chair of Italian and Italian American Studies that, thanks to the support of the community, has been created to promote Italian and Italian American Studies and has reached many, many students and professors and the off-campus community. That evening we had many people, like we always do, and it was a great pleasure to see how once again we were able to talk about Italian art, Italian history, Italian culture, in the ways in which it travels abroad. And your experience was perfect because, as a matter of fact, you're from Rome, and you were there at the time of La Dolce Vita, but then you came to New Jersey in the 60s. Can you tell us a little bit about this transition?
Yes. First of all, I must say that I came to America for love, not looking for a job or for work or for the golden opportunity that most people come here for. The 60s were incredible years. In Italy were great years because, not just because of the La Dolce Vita, but because we had come out of a post-war climate of where Italy had to regain its dignity, regain its economic powers and so on. And the 60s brought to Italy a lot of excitement, that it was really very obvious in the arts. Coming from Italy, I arrived here in 67, and it was just a few months. I arrived in Newark. It was a few months after the riots, and it was a total different scene for me. In a certain way, I was used to see a rebirth of a nation because I grew up, I was born during the war. And the same thing actually happened in Newark. I saw Newark at the lowest point in 67, and I saw it very, very slowly but strongly be reborn. And for me, both of them were a great experience of human strength that you can always be reborn out of the ashes, so to speak. I saw it in Italy, and I saw it in Newark.
What you brought with you, obviously, was an art, a set of techniques, really a vision about culture and art. But what does it mean to come from a family that is so established, right, in this field, and with whom you've worked, and come into a place that obviously you had to reinvent as your place of creation?
It was for me, a very exciting time. Obviously, I came here. I was 23 years old. So you are not afraid of anything. You are not afraid of new experience. You are not afraid to be constantly reborn. You are not afraid to fail, so to speak. And one of the fortunate thing that I was in Italy, I was educated and trained knowing a single thing. Silversmithing was only part of my family heritage, so to speak. I was exposed to all of the arts, and I was part of an atmosphere and a circle of people that were interested in everything from music to movie making to theater, literature. I mean, it was a very normal thing for me, for instance, on a weekend to spend time to go and listen to poetry being read. It was part of my upbringing. So coming to America, I was only, what I had to do, I use always the same sentence, I had to recalculate. I had to really recalculate where I was going and how to get there. But it wasn't difficult because as I said that evening at Montclair State lecture, you can find your muses everywhere. And I certainly found them in Newark, New Jersey. It wasn't that difficult.
And you did inspire many people that evening, and hopefully I'll get back to that. But I really want to address first some of the most important points, elements in your beautiful work. What struck me about you when I invited you was the fact that you are a conservator, you are an art historian, you do design and create. So let's look at these aspects separately. The first one would be conservation. Yes. Tell us a little bit, what is your relationship to the past and in art in particular?
Well, it is for many artists of the past. I mean, conservation was part of their work. I mean, Bernini conserved ancient statues, so did Algardi, and so on. So I never saw it. For me, it's actually a mission. It is the most important thing that I think I do. I consider a raison d'être, a purpose in my life. Because the purpose that I see is to preserve the past and reintroduce it to the next generation. And that's what I try to do in my life.
And indeed, when you create your objects, you're both looking at the present yes. and the past. And we have some images here. Maybe you want to comment about some of them.
Yes, although some of my objects are modern in structures, they have always been inspired by the past. The inspiration comes from what I believe silver represents. Silver, to me, is a mystical metal. It represents the mood and the light of the moon. Silver was also the first kinetic form of art. As you move, or as silver moves, it reflects light in a different way. So it's always in movement. It's always talking to you in a different way, as you can see from this water picture, representing the wave of the water. But and it is really the mystical aspect that I try to capture in my silver, the reflection that will give you a mood, a specific mood, an atmosphere. This is my personal cowboy hat. I don't have a cow or a horse, but I have a hat. And mine is made out of silver. I even have a feather in my hat. But that is really, I'm looking for reflection, constantly for reflection. It's a dance that I try to establish. And the dance has its own rhythms. Every object I try to put within a specific rhythm of lights.
And speaking of the past, one of the things that are central to your creative process is also the legacy of alchemy.
Yes.
And you have described yourself as an alchemist of the 20th and now 21st century. What does that mean exactly?
Alchemy and the working of metal, obviously, are basically the same thing since ancient time. Alchemy, it's really a mystic form of transformation. Alchemy looks at nature in the most minute things, and it transforms. And that's what art is. Art is a transformation of nature. You can take a color from a stone, from a dye from a flower or whatever, and you can make it into a painting. You can take wax and turn it into a sculpture. So this is a question of transformation. So I use alchemy and the processes of alchemy in my work because I believe that the best training to achieve the ultimate goal, that is sublimation. That is really the final goal of art. And when an artist may be playing the piano, let's say a jazz pianist, sublimation is the final thing. It's not just the notes. But the way he gets there is through alchemy, even if he doesn't know it or she doesn't know it.
I'm glad you say this because getting to know you for me has been particularly special because I haven't only met a great artist, but I've met somebody who thinks about the process of creation in special ways. During one of our conversations, you actually said, what I do, anybody can do, any good silversmith can do. I think you're being too modest anyway.
No, but it is true.
At the same time, you started focusing on the creative process as the one that we need to think when we look at an object. You know, as you put it, walking is natural and dancing is art, right? So tell us a little bit about this dancing, this creative moment that exists behind the object that we can enjoy visually and aesthetically.
Yes. I'm using the word of Samuel Johnson. That's how he defines art, actually. But the fact is that I think that we had to capture all the things that surround us in life, and because our experience is what forms art. I think of art and the creation of art as digging into our memories, into our primordial soup, and trying to reorganize all these elements. That's what art is for me. And I try to organize in my own way. My experiences are what they dictate. My experiences are basically based in history, because history is the base of everything I do and I think. I like to think of history as our colloquium with the past generation, with the dead. And it's not my definition, but Voltaire used to think of history as the game that the dead people play upon historian. And on the contrary, he also says that history is the game that historians play upon the dead people. So I try very hard in my work not to play game with the past, but to use their advice to have an open discourse. And I have this open discourse not through talking to the dead through science, but through the occult, but actually to studying and have a colloquium with their works of art, what they left us. And I try to understand what they tell me, and I try to reinterpret it in a modern key. That is really all I try to do.
This was something that you left to the students actually after your lecture that evening.
Yes.
And I thought what was interesting also was the fact that you addressed them as part of a university, yes. Which is a place that in a way is slightly different from the academy. This is a distinction that is important to you, the ways in which you have borrowed it from Agostino Mascardi, the 17th century Italian professor of rhetoric, and members of many academies. What is the difference between the two, and does it still make sense to have this distinction today?
I think it's very important to have that distinction today as well. Mascardi told us that the academy, and he was a professor at La Sapienza, he told us that the university is a place where the dog on the riverbanks goes because he's thirsty, needs to drink. And the academy is a place of the muses. So you go to the academy because you want to smell the flowers in the garden of the muses. And this concept of the muses being a garden is not just a myth or imagination. It can actually be a real thing within our concept of thinking. Garden has always been the place where people went for their great ideas. There is also another 16th century great book that is called the Rosarium Philosophorum, is the rose garden of the philosopher. And in this book describe great philosophers all different times, from ancient times to the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, where they can all have a conversation together. And that's what we should be doing. Converse with the muses and with the philosophers of the past.
This definitely stayed with us, and I think in particular the fact that you reminded everybody that these muses can be found everywhere, yes. And even in the most challenging conditions.
Yes.
So thinking of what you have done for many, many years now, in a field that in a way is quite exceptional, that is to say you work with silver, but we do know that silver is not as common as it used to be in the past, so in a way this industry is slowly dying. So we would like to know how your work then is still relevant, who's interested in it, for example, and what kind of meaning can we attach to it? What is a silver object today?
It is actually an extremely difficult question to answer, because silver is not fashionable the same way used, because people have lost the way of looking into silver in a certain way. It is not just a luxury item. It's not just the representation of power. It's not just that. it does have there is a mystical aspect, and that's the alchemical aspect of every art. There is mysticism in everything, especially in art. And for me, silver, unless people can understand that aspect, they will never come back. But I'm very fortunate. I have many museums that buy my object, and I have many collectors that do buy my object. And strangely enough, they see things in it. I do not know why, but I hope it's by sublimation. So that's.
And you have worked actually for some of the major silver companies,
Yes.
for Tiffany's, for Cartier, for Bulgari.
Yes.
I guess the next question for me is who's learning this art now? Not only the techniques, but also the kind of lesson that you've been talking about, the kind of perception of the creative process. Thinking also that you have some assistants in your studio here in New Jersey, but you're not, for example, training large numbers of artists and artisans, right? So what's the future of all of this?
There are many schools throughout the United States and Europe in which goldsmithing and silversmithing is taught, and metalwork in general doesn't have to be just silver. Many of the people that worked for me in the past, because my age now, limits me to the teaching aspect. But they came from many universities. They came from Scotland. They came from Switzerland, from Germany. So they have been trained. They leave the university and they come to work for me for 2-3 years. Now I only have 2, but they've been for me 38 years and 16 years, something like that. So they're masters. They're not.
And they work in your studio, yes. And we actually have some images.
Yes, it starts, as you can see, with the fire, because fire is really the transformer. As everything can only happen through fire. And this is how silver is melted, and then the new cycle of life begins. You could actually see that there was old silver object that been melted and would be transformed into new things. We start from basically, the beginning is just making an ingot from which we hammer it into a sheet. I think this is self-explanatory. So we go from the rolling to the actually hammering. You can see actually how the transformation takes place, and it's all done by hand. This is the way we raise the object. Every hammer stroke, there is rhythm, there is everything in it. But this is the part in which we do the waxes for the casting. And that's also another form of transformation. We go from wax to the casting. Everything. So basically, it's a lengthy journey, creation. It goes through many phases, and each one takes a different aspect, a different technique. But at the end, everything works together. Even stones, we do our own lapidary work, and you can see how stone is transformed into the finial. And this is pretty much the final object of, these are the parts of, and this is the object. This is a tureen for risotto alla pescatora. Rice fisherman style.
This multi-step process is also yes. What really impressed the students. So they had no idea that it would take so many steps and so many different techniques and a really long time fundamentally. So it seems like one of the elements is also that of having a special relationship with time. And the other part that I really liked is also the idea that you have to create emptiness also, yes. Especially for the hollow objects. Yes. And these are two beautiful notions that yes, in a way have to do with lightness and yet weight.
Well, every object, most of the objects that we make, they actually are vessels. And vessels contain something. And the importance of a vessel is what they must contain. And in each vessel, the artist has to impact a meaning for what it will contain. That goes from an amulet that will contain a talisman or something like that to a soup tureen. To me, they're the same thing. Each one of them has to contain an important things of life, a part of what we call our material culture. That's what we do. I mean, so silversmith is nothing more than a facet of material culture. We
Right.
supply this material culture.
You are the first New Jerseyan, the first Italian, and the first silversmith to have been awarded a MacArthur Fellowship. And I'm curious to know how it has allowed you to move in new different directions, if any, and in particular, what you think it has produced for you as an artist. It is a 5-year.
It's a 5-year fellowship, and one of the beautiful things about the MacArthur Fellowship that they do not require that you have to produce anything. But indirectly, psychologically, they actually force you to move at a faster speed and a faster rate that I ever moved. In my particular case, at my age, has caused me a lot of, it has given me a lot of energy, a tremendous amount of energy. I feel I must do something to prove them right. And also to prove them that, and I hope that I'm not the first silversmith to receive, or not the first conservator to receive, and not the first Italian.
That would certainly be beautiful.
Not the only Italian, I meant. I still remain the first. But.
There are some projects that you're working on. I don't know if they're related specifically to the MacArthur Fellowship. I'm thinking of the one at the Met Museum. Do you want to share some information?
I work with many different museums, both as a consultant and as a conservator. So I have a great opportunity, to work with them. Right now, there is a program of putting together a group of reuniting a group of 12 Renaissance objects representing the emperors. But it's a project that will not be done for 2-3 years at least. So, but it's something that...
and what is the subject?
The subject of these are tazzas. They are objects that are like centerpieces, and they describe the history. Each tazza describes the history of an emperor. And so they are and they're taken from Suetonius' lives of the emperors. But the project, is under the auspices of the Metropolitan Museum, and it should materialize. I feel pretty confident it will. And so maybe we can speak in 3 years.
And once again, it brings together all your different souls, where the art historian, the conservator, and the creator of objects as well. In the course of talking to you, to go back to some of the objects that we saw, I was struck by the fact that you can also be inspired by other disciplines such as music. So the tureen that we saw has a particularly interesting story that you shared with the students.
Yes, I think that rhythm is the most important thing in life. Even when you hammer, you have a rhythm. When you write a poetry, you have rhythms. Not just when you play the piano or when you dance. And in an object, when you model an object, you can actually bring your rhythms into the object. You can do it with your fingers if you're working on clay. You can do it with a hammer and the chisel if you're carving, and so on. In the case of the subturine, because it had to do with the fisherman style, I was inspired by something that I used to hear day after day, because all my family played the piano, so everybody was practicing. We were 5 siblings, and there was Tchaikovsky, Barcarolle. So that is, I hope that the rhythm of Tchaikovsky comes into the subturine. It does for me. I hope it does for the rest of the people that see it.
It definitely did, and when you came, I remember the students were again thinking about that process of crossing disciplines and how inspiring it can be. You also shared a few mottos with them, and they have been referring to them constantly in their papers. And some of them have to do with love, some of them have to do with dullness and hastiness. Do you want to share those with us and really place them in context, or not only for the arts, but maybe even for life in a way?
Yes. The thing that sometimes is upsetting, that many of the things that we take from the past are very violent things. Veni vidi vicit, is one of it, or the art of war is what every corporation motivation courses is about, the art of war. But I think that the most important thing to conquer is love. So my motto is amor vincit omnia, love conquers all. And the other thing that the thing about hastiness, and it has to do, and it has to do with alchemy. You cannot achieve anything with hastiness. And another thing that, so all those things are basically taken from wise people, the men and women that live long before, before our time.
And
that's
yet
all I do.
They still have important lessons, obviously.
They do, yes.
So
history is a continuum, doesn't stop.
absolutely. And thinking of history, obviously, I would like to go back to Rome as well,
Yes.
your city. Also, the capital of, interestingly, not only Italy as a political center, but also a religious capital,
Right.
and of a universal and not just national nature, right? And it has been very much in the news. And I was
Yes.
thinking about addressing with you, and you can go in details. We still have a little bit of time. My question was a bit, is a bit creative in this case, because I was thinking we have a new pope, and you have made objects for popes in the past, and
Yes,
your
I have.
family has
Yes.
Too. Maybe you
Yes.
can make a reference to that too. And also, we don't have a prime minister in Italy, despite weeks,
Yes.
after the election. So maybe just briefly, what are the two objects that
Well, I don't know
you
if
would
I have a
make?
specific object, but I have what will go into the object, so to speak. I work for 3 popes personally, but one of the things that I think about the Pope, I hope it is the greatest Pope that we'll have in a long time. I think it's a good beginning, because as a Jesuit it shows that I'm Francis, and I will definitely create an object that's related to St. Francis. I will go to Assisi for inspiration.
This sounds perfect for us, and we would like to thank you for being with us and sharing
Thank
all
you.
these thoughts. If you would like more information about this or any other edition of Carpe Diem, you can write to us at carpediem@mail.montclair.edu or call us at 973-655-5158. For Carpe Diem, I'm Teresa Fiore. Thanks for watching.